And it was all about how there is a new trend of young Americans, young people in America, self-identifying as narcissists. And I saw that and I was like, oh shit, and there's a backstory here, right? So you all know I'm really interested in psychology and all of that. A couple years ago, I started looking at YouTube videos about narcissism. There's a lot. It's one of those internet rabbit holes you can go down. There are entire YouTube channels with hundreds of thousands of subscribers and thousands of videos all about narcissists. There's hundreds of different types of narcissists. There's all kinds of videos of women saying, my ex-boyfriend was a narcissist. All kinds of videos of people saying, my mother, my father, my parents are narcissists. All kinds of videos of parents saying, my teenage child is a narcissist. All kinds of shit about narcissism. And this latest trend of people now claiming to be narcissists, self-IDing as narcissists, saying, I am a narcissist and I'm proud to be a narcissist. That takes the cake. And I read the news item about young people self-identifying as narcissists. And I thought, I have got something to say about this. So I made a slideshow for tonight. Hope you enjoy it. And I hope you appreciate it. Here we go. Everything we know about narcissism is wrong. Let me repeat that. Everything we know about narcissism is wrong. Now, please don't take that personally. I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong. When I say we, I don't mean you. I mean our culture in general. The way we think about what it means to be a narcissist, how to deal with narcissism, what narcissism manifests itself as, everything we think about it is wrong. Right? There's this whole thing, especially since Donald Trump was first elected, widely in the media, Donald Trump is accused of being a narcissist. And I think he works very hard to kind of play up that image, right? His supporters are often very attracted to his confidence and the kind of crass rudeness that's kind of his staple. And so there's been this whole obsession with narcissism in our culture, and everything that is in the popular culture about what a narcissist is, how to deal with narcissists, what causes narcissism, all of it is wrong. And I am here tonight to give you a new perspective that will change everything that you think. I mean, maybe you already know some of what I'm about to say, but if you have the mainstream perception of what narcissism is, tonight's slideshow is going to change your perception and hopefully enable you to be a more successful and happy person with more rewarding relationships. And this is related to our overall themes of, city building and anti-imperialism and innovationism and all of that, but, indirectly related. So here we go. Everything we know about narcissism is wrong. Narcissism is an internet obsession these days. There are endless videos, there are Facebook groups, etc., bemoaning narcissism. I was married to a narcissist. My parents were narcissists. My children is a narcissist. My ex-boyfriend is a narcissist. I work with a narcissist. Everyone is on the internet complaining about narcissism. It's one of these many internet rabbit holes you can go down, right? And that's one thing about our culture, right? It used to be that, things just kind of happened, right? If a young teenage boy had trouble getting a girlfriend and felt like women were unfair to him, it was just a phase he went through. And he eventually got over it and whatever. Now that young teenage boy gets on the internet and discovers that there's a whole community of teenage boys who feel that women don't treat them fairly. And they're called incels. And they have a whole community, a whole rabbit hole, and a whole ideology and a whole worldview centered around the fact that they are involuntarily celibate. Right? And there are many, many examples of this, of things that used to just be kind of passing phases, weird mental health blips that people used to go through, that have now become communities where the people join these communities and build on each other's resentment and fear and anger, and they just build on each other's issues, and it gets worse, right? And there's many, many of these rabbit holes that people go down, right? There's communities of people that are paranoid, right? That think the government is out to get them. They're called targeted individuals. And it's not to say that some of these people haven't gotten unfairly harassed or been singled out, by the local police department or somebody who doesn't like them, but That then causes them to go into one of these internet communities, and they go down a huge rabbit hole, and I'm a targeted individual. They develop a whole identity around thinking the government is out to get them. And there's many examples of this now. This is a weird aspect of our culture, and it's due to the change in information technology, right? Feelings that people used to have, emotions and identities that people used to have, stages they used to go through, now become internet fandoms and identities. And the latest one is not only, there's already a huge internet community around, I'm victimized by a narcissist. This person I don't like is a narcissist, right? But now there's a new trend of people claiming that they are narcissists, and that's a good thing, and they're proud to be narcissists. And I have a feeling, and I will make the case tonight, that the overwhelming majority of people who self-identify as narcissists are not narcissists. However, they are in for a rude awakening. There may be some legit narcissists who self-identify as narcissists. But I think that the overwhelming majority of these younger people that are on the internet saying that they are narcissists and they're proud of it, I think they're not narcissists. However, they are going to be going out into the world with a very, very bad, set of advice and a very, very bad model to live by. And they're in for a rude awakening. But I don't think they're really narcissists. But I understand why they would think they are. And I understand why our culture is so weird. And we just need to just take this narcissism thing head on. What is narcissism, etc. So all of this, the obsession with narcissists on the internet, the books about narcissism, all of this is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what narcissism is, where it comes from, etc. Narcissism is a personality trait defined by excessive selfishness or love of self, right? Generally, it is described by the psychological community as narcissistic personality disorder, right? When someone is excessively selfish and disregards others to a great extreme, they have a personality disorder called the narcissistic personality disorder. Now, the word comes from a Greek myth of an individual who glimpsed themselves in their reflection in the lake. They saw their reflection in the water and were just so enthralled by their reflection that I think they starved to death or something like that because they just couldn't stop looking at themselves. That's where it comes from, a Greek myth or legend, Narcissus. Thank you, Jenny Lynn. Jenny Lynn knew. But what narcissism generally is selfishness, basically. It is an inflated selfishness in one's personality. That's what it generally is. Now, where does it come from? Well, it's natural and normal. An infant is a total narcissist. If you were ever a baby, you were a narcissist when you were a baby. And, you can think I was not a narcissist when I was a baby. I was empathetic and caring as a baby. Well, you might tell yourself that. Even Mother Teresa, even Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., even Jesus Christ himself, every baby was a narcissist. It makes total sense for a baby to be a narcissist. A baby must cry for what it wants. A baby does not have the capacity, neurologically to be aware of other people's full humanity. It is perfectly normal and healthy for a baby to be a narcissist. And if a baby was not a narcissist, that baby wouldn't survive. If that baby was busy worrying about what other people thought, if that baby wasn't, crying and demanding what it needed and alerting its caretakers immediately when it had an issue and not letting it go until it felt better, that baby wouldn't live, right? It is absolutely normal for a baby or an infant to be a narcissist. And we are all narcissists when we are born, right? A baby will die if it is not taken care of, right? And when you are born, when you are an infant, you rely on your parent, your mother, your caretaker for everything. And you are very demanding of that caretaker, and you make your demands without any concern for that caretaker or anybody else. It is perfectly normal. However, as we grow up, we gradually become less selfish and we attach to other people. and we become aware of other people's needs. We develop more patience and more empathy. That's part of maturity. That's how we grow up as we go through life. And in fact, in my experience, elderly people tend to have lots of empathy and skill in interacting with others as a result of life experience. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but some of the most insightful people I've ever met are octogenarians because they've been on this planet for 80 years and they've been dealing with people for 80 years and they understand people. And that, even though, sometimes we have a stereotype of senior citizens being grumpy or senior citizens being old fashioned and intolerant of the youth, but actually, if you talk with elderly people, in a lot of cases, they are the most insightful into human behavior, into how other people think and feel, because they've been on the planet longer than anybody else and they have dealt with people, and that shedding one's inborn infantile narcissism is just a matter of growing up, right? As you grow up, you are less narcissistic, right? When you are an infant, you're completely narcissistic. And as you grow up, you become less and less narcissistic. That is just the basic human experience. Now, people with an unhealthy level of narcissism have it because something went wrong in the process of development. Rather than naturally becoming more empathetic as they got older, their development and their ability to connect with others was frozen or slowed down. That's the important thing, right? When you were a baby, you started growing and you started gradually understanding that other people exist, understanding that other people have feelings and needs too, understanding that if you want to get what you want in life, you need to think about what other people want. And you gradually started maturing as you went along, and so did everybody else. But for those people that have narcissistic personality disorder or an unhealthy level of selfishness or narcissism, what happened is that for some reason, their ability to grow up and become less narcissistic slowed down or froze or stopped, right? They stopped growing up on an emotional level. They stopped maturing. And as a result, they tend to act like overgrown children. They throw fits if they don't get their way. They don't notice that other people exist and have needs and wants, etc. And that's really what defines narcissism. Narcissists are people who, they just don't seem to understand that other people exist, that other people have needs, that it's not all about them. Their own needs, wants, feelings, need for validation overrides everyone else. If they don't get their way, they can be very obnoxious and hard to deal with. And when it really gets down to it, narcissists are overgrown children. And some of them blatantly act like it, right? Some of them you'll be surprised. I mean, you will see adults who throw little baby tantrums and stamp their feet, but not always, right? Sometimes they conceal their childishness in more adult ways. They don't scream and yell like a 2-year-old, but they become very vengeful and spiteful, etc. But on an emotional level, it's the same thing, right? And it's just that their emotional and interpersonal development has been frozen at a certain stage. And they, as a result, have become rather childish in their emotions, rather selfish, rather inconsiderate of other people, etc. Now, contemporary discourse on narcissism is missing a number of key points, and that's what tonight's slideshow is going to focus on. The first point: narcissistic people tend to take great offense at other people asserting their needs. They view other people existing as an affront to them somehow. Narcissists generally explain this outrage at others existing by accusing them of being a narcissist. And this is what makes it so ironic that there are all these Facebook groups and YouTube videos. Oh, my friend's a narcissist. My ex-boyfriend's a narcissist. My ex-girlfriend's a narcissist. Those people that are making those things are often narcissists themselves. Why? Because they had a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a parent or a child or a coworker who asserted their own needs and their own interests. And how dare they? They must be a narcissist. And in fact, one thing I can guarantee you: if you meet somebody and they are constantly accusing other people of being a narcissist, they are very likely a narcissist themselves. One of the biggest signs of a narcissist is that they are constantly pointing the finger at other people and saying, you're a narcissist, you're a narcissist, you're a narcissist. And in fact, if there's somebody that every time, you assert yourself and say, hey, hey, I would like, my needs met. Hey, I don't think you're treating me right. If every time you do that, they point at you and say, you're a narcissist, stop being such a narcissist, you can be sure that that person is a narcissist. And so that's what's so ironic. All these YouTube channels about watching out for other people being narcissists and everyone's a narcissist, the people that are doing it are narcissistic themselves, and that's what's driving them to obsess and fixate on other people being narcissists. Now, the next point that we need to make is narcissists are not sociopaths. All right? People think that narcissist and sociopath are the same thing. They are totally different. They are opposite ends of the spectrum. They both can be very indifferent to other people and their needs and feelings, but for completely opposite reasons. Why? Sociopaths are indifferent. They don't experience normal interpersonal emotions. They are bored, and they ease their boredom by indulging their libido, their drive for aggression and sex, right? Sociopaths, they don't really relate to other people. They don't really care about other people. They don't care what other people think of them. They don't really care about other people at all. And they're kind of missing. It's almost like the part of their brain that we use for interpersonal relationships, they don't have. And so other people are just kind of like, who cares? Doesn't matter to them. And because they're missing all the stimulation that we get from being friends with this person or fighting with this person, because that's just not there in their mind, they're bored all the time. And what they try to replace the boredom of, missing this huge part of the human experience, which is relating to other people with, they replace that with aggression and sex, right? Sociopaths tend to, be really obsessed with sex, and they tend to be really drawn to violence, hurting other people, getting in fights, they tend to seek out jobs that involve a lot of violence, because they're bored, because relating to other people is something they can't do. Narcissists are not like that. Narcissists are highly emotional, and they're caught up in their self-image. They are very concerned about how other people see them, and they constantly need to be making sure they're getting their due. Sociopaths don't give a shit if they get validated or not. Narcissists, on the other hand, they need constant validation. They need everyone to be in awe of them. They need everyone to be rewarding them constantly. They need everyone to be telling them how great they are. They need to be the center of attention. They need all that. Sociopaths don't need any of that. Sociopaths don't give a shit, and they're bored, and they deal with their boredom with sex and violence. And these are two completely different mindsets. Yes, both of them can be very nasty people sometimes. Both of them can be very, very mean-spirited and harmful and do mean, nasty things, but they do them for completely different reasons. And you have to understand this point, right? People use the word narcissist and the word sociopath interchangeably, and that is a complete misunderstanding of the term. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions. The reason, and this is what it really gets down to, what people who talk about narcissism do not understand is that there is a such thing as a healthy level of narcissism. You must think highly of yourself in order to do good. And self-esteem prevents us from harming other people, doing wrong. Healthy narcissism says, I am too good to do this. This kind of behavior is below me, and I want to see myself as the good guy. The narcissist needs to see themselves as the good guy, desperately, right? They need constant reassurance that they are good, they are amazing, they're exceptional, and they're desperate to get that reassurance. And a lot of people that are unhealthy in other ways don't have that at all. And some of the most nasty people out there, sociopaths and others, are not narcissists because they don't care about being the good guy. They don't care if they're the bad guy. They don't care if they're doing something that most of humanity would view as mean and nasty and cruel. They just don't care, right? Narcissism is self-esteem, right? And healthy narcissism, holding yourself to high standards, saying, I'm not going to do that. Am I going to be the kind of person that robs somebody? Am I going to be the kind of person that steals coins from a blind man's cup? Am I going to be the kind of person that, that is rude and nasty and nobody at work like? I mean, some level of narcissism is necessary in order to be a good person. If you didn't have at least some narcissism, you would have no desire to be good. You would have no desire for other people to like you, right? And that is what people are missing, right? And that sociopaths have no narcissism whatsoever. Narcissists, on the other hand, are on the extreme end of the spectrum, right? They are so obsessed with what other people think and getting that constant validation, and that's what people are missing. Narcissists must see themselves as the good guy. They often distort reality and lie to themselves in order to keep believing this. But they must see themselves as good, and they seek constant validation from this world. That is what drives narcissists more than anything. They need validation. Whereas sociopaths are indifferent to how others see them. They have no desire to see themselves as good. No amount of cruelty or immoral behavior bothers them at all. They have no healthy narcissism, and they hold themselves to no ethical or moral standards. Now, one thing, and this is very important, is that one of the most common forms of narcissism is what is called deflated narcissism. And in fact, I think that deflated narcissism might be more common than classical narcissism. The reason that it is not as noticeable is because it's something they keep to themselves usually, right? The classical narcissist is very confident, very boastful, very obsessed with running to the spotlight, but they have what they call deflated narcissists. And deflated narcissists, they are completely selfish. They can't identify with other people, but they lack the confidence that classical narcissists have. Instead, they hide in victimhood. They see themselves as the most important. They ignore the needs of others, and they don't understand other people's motivations, but they lack the confidence to assert themselves in the more classical way that narcissists do. They develop a kind of victim complex, and they hide behind it. They don't assert their needs. They don't stand up for what they believe, and they hide in their victimhood. In their mind, everyone else is a selfish person, and I'm the only good one. I am the victim because I'm good. I don't get my way because I'm not a narcissist like everyone else. People who do get their way are bad people. People who accomplish what I don't have the confidence to accomplish are just bad people. They're narcissists. This is really common. This is really, really common. I have known many people like this who they're narcissistic, not in the sense that they're going around boasting and achieving, but that they're very envious and bitter of people who do, and they don't fight and stand up for what they believe. And if they have a need, they don't assert it, and they just kind of go through life in this bitter place of, oh boy, everyone else is a big selfish bully, but I'm good and I get walked all over, and they just hide in this place of victimhood. It is a form of narcissism. It is. And those people can be very nasty, and they can be very vengeful, and they can hurt other people, but it doesn't manifest itself in the same way. And I think this is actually much more common. These are narcissists that to some degree or other have been broken, or have been bullied, or have been very badly abused, right? That it more accompanies depression, I think. A lot of narcissists go through a kind of a manic depressive style where they're very explosive and active, and then they're down. And this kind of narcissist, the deflated narcissist, is a depressed person, and their depression is they're not relating to other people. They're not relating to other people. They're not connecting with other people. The world is just full of big, mean, selfish people who don't care about them. They don't have serious interactions with other people. They're good. They're a poor, good person, and the rest of the world are just a bunch of big meanies, and they want to hide in it. That is a form of narcissism. That is a really common form of narcissism. And people don't think of that as being narcissism, but it is narcissism, because in their minds, they're the only good one. In their minds, they can do no wrong. In their minds, other people can't have serious needs or real motivations. They're all just big meanies hogging the spotlight from them. And they hide in this isolated, lonely, narcissistic place. It just doesn't manifest itself in, big public displays and big constant, grabs for validation. It manifests itself in this kind of quiet bitterness, but it's still narcissism. And that's also missing from a lot of this internet narcissism discourse, right? A lot of those people that are on the internet whining and complaining about how everyone in their life is a narcissist, and how their ex-boyfriend was a narcissist, and their teacher was a narcissist, and their cousin was a narcissist, and their mom and dad and brother and coworkers are all narcissists. A lot of those people are actually themselves deflated narcissists. But anyway, jealousy. And let me emphasize this. Jealousy is one of the most narcissistic emotions. It is the most blatantly narcissistic emotion. And I'm telling you, if you want to be a healthy person, get rid of jealousy. Jealousy, envy, it's not a good place to go, right? And it will lead you to a very dark place very, very quickly. Anything that you do in life that is motivated by jealousy and envy, it's going to lead you down a dark path, and it's going to lead you to isolate, and it's going to lead you to become more narcissistic. Jealousy is basically the thought that someone else having prevents me from having. Others must lose so that I can win. My validation requires other people to be humiliated, harmed, or degraded. None of those things are true. Let me repeat that. None of those things are true in the real world. However, we live in a society which is defined by the scarcity mindset. They are teaching kids in school that we're all going to die from climate change because the world is just overpopulating and there's just too many people in the world and we're going to run out of resources. And there's a reason that people are thinking this way, because they are pushing the scarcity mindset onto us like crazy. There is no limit to growth. There is no limit to human creativity. There is no shortage of space and existence, right? But they are pounding this into our heads constantly. And as a result, people are going to think, the pie is only this big. And if the pie is only this big, the only way my slice gets any bigger is by cutting into somebody else's. Look, I have said this over and over again, but I cannot say it enough, right? Are we going to run out of wood? Are we going to run out of wood? If we were still burning wood, charcoal to keep our homes warm, we would have deforested the planet 3 or 4 times over by now. That's true. Except we don't burn wood to heat our homes. We started using coal. We have electrical heating. We have natural gas. And did we run out of oil in 1992, like the book The Limits to Growth, published by the Club of Rome, said we were going to? Did we run out of oil in 1992? No. If we had still been extracting oil in the same way, we would have, except we developed deep sea drilling, we developed hydraulic fracking, and now there's plenty more oil to come. And, if we just keep burning fossil fuels until the end of time, we may eventually run out of them. However, human beings have already invented nuclear power, and fusion energy research is in the works. And human beings are constantly reinventing our relationship with nature. And that is the important thing to remember. From the time of hunter-gatherer civilization to the dawn of agriculture, to the Industrial Revolution, to the computer revolution and AI, our relationship with nature has never been stagnant. And the only way there is a limit to growth, is if you assume that our relationship with nature is always going to be the same. And yes, if we stay on fossil fuels until the end of time, we will eventually run out of fossil fuels. But that is not the nature of humanity. Just like we didn't stay on burning charcoal until the end of time, we moved to a higher fuel source. And you cannot repeat this point enough. And they are pushing the scarcity mindset in school like crazy. They are doing all kinds of sick brainwashing rituals on kids in school these days to tell them you are a cancer on the planet. There's too many people. These kids are having climate anxiety. They're just pounding into their heads the scarcity mindset. Well, the scarcity mindset, it doesn't only make kids depressed. It doesn't only make them, believe in depopulation and eugenics and all kinds of crap. But on top of that, it's going to lead to them having a huge amount of jealousy. Because if you're telling people 24 hours a day, there's not enough to go around, they're going to think, oh, someone else having prevents me from having. Others must lose so I can win. My validation requires other people to be humiliated, harmed, or degraded. No, it doesn't. In the real world, it doesn't, right? If you're in the Olympics, maybe there's only one gold medal, but there's no reason that somebody else being good at something prevents you from being good at something. There is no reason that somebody else being successful prevents you from being successful. The problem is we are ruled by a group of billionaires and bankers, Wall Street and London, and they are determined to keep their grip on the world. And this is how they think. They are jealous narcissists. And they say, we've got to stop Russia from rising. We've got to stop China from rising. We got to stop fusion energy from being developed. We have got to stay at the top of the world forever so that we can, that's the only way we can stay at the top. They think this way. And as Karl Marx said, the ruling ideology of every epoch is the ideology of the ruling class. And the ruling class of our epoch are the imperialist monopolies, the big financiers. And they are jealous, narcissistic motherfuckers. And as a result, scarcity mindset, jealousy is everywhere. However, it's a lie. The idea that I can only gain at others' expense, that's a lie. The idea that other people's success or gains inherently take from me, that is a lie. All of that is a lie, but it is a lie that narcissists obsessively believe, right? Jealousy is essential. Narcissists wouldn't be dangerous at all if they weren't jealous. Well, maybe they would be, but one of the most dangerous aspects of the narcissism is jealousy and the scarcity mindset. So we'll continue. Now, this is an important one, and this one I think is interesting. Parental narcissism has two conflicting sides. There are a lot of narcissistic parents out there. And if you are the child of narcissistic parents, you are trapped because narcissistic parents have two constant needs that don't line up. Number one, narcissistic parents, they need their kid to be amazing and high achieving in order to validate them. Their kid has to be the best kid ever. Their kid has to be amazing so that everyone knows that they're amazing, that they're amazing parents, that their offspring is so amazing. So if narcissistic parents, they need their kids to be high performing. They need their kids to get straight A's. They need their kids to be the best athletes. You think about stage mothers. You think about narcissistic parents. They need their kid to do well, and not for that kid, for themselves. They don't care about how the kid feels. They don't care about what the kid really wants to do or the kid's future. They need that kid to do well so that they get the validation. That's one thing about narcissistic parents. On the other hand, and this is where it gets really messy, at the same time, they want their kid to be amazing. Their kid has to be the best. Their kid has to be the most high achieving. Number two, their kid having confidence, self-esteem, or pride in their accomplishments is a big threat. The narcissistic parent, if their kid is feeling proud of themselves, if their kid is feeling like they've done a good job, if their kid is having good self-esteem, that's taking away something from them. So the narcissistic parent puts their child into a trap. On the one hand, their child must be the best. On the other hand, their child must not feel good about themselves. And their child is going, what am I supposed to do? I have to be the best under all circumstances, but I'm not allowed to feel good about myself. The second that I say, wow, I did a good job, the parent tears them down. So if you have a narcissistic parent, the parent is constantly giving two contradictory commands. One, you must be the best, and if you're not the best, I'm going to punish you and I hate you. And you better not like yourself, and you better not think you're the best, and you better not be proud of anything you do, because if you do that, I'm going to punish you. And the kid is they can't win, right? If they actually achieve the good things that their parent is driving them to achieve, the parent is going to see them as arrogant, and it's going to tear them down. But if they don't achieve it, the parent is going to say, oh, you're not winning the validation that I'm supposed to get. So children of narcissistic parents, they can't win. And this is a trap that a lot of people in my generation, I have seen so many people who have narcissistic parents who fall into this trap. They can't win. They are never good enough for their parent. Nothing they do is ever good enough to satisfy their narcissistic parent. And on top of that, they're not allowed to ever feel good about any accomplishment they've ever had. They're not allowed to feel confident. They're not allowed to feel proud. They're never allowed to actually be proud of what they do, right? And that's a trap that narcissistic parents put their children in. They are never good enough and must always strive to do better to give the parent validation, and they must never be proud of themselves or feel confident, as this is a threat to the narcissistic parent, right? And the new trend of self-identified narcissists, I think what this is, right, is these are the children of narcissistic parents. They have parents that are constantly saying, go out, you must achieve in order to validate me. And every time that child is showing pride in themselves, feeling confident, that parent then tears them down and calls them a narcissist. And it looks to me that these self-ID'd narcissists, these are kids saying, fine, I am a narcissist. That's what it is. And that gets me to the fact that there is a huge amount of literature out there claiming that narcissists are highly successful. And, there's the Ayn Rand, her whole set of writings is be a narcissist. That's how to get ahead in this world. Narcissists are amazing, right? And they tell us Donald Trump is a narcissist. They tell us Elon Musk is a narcissist. They're constantly telling us that successful people are narcissists. And so if you throw into the binder that we're now getting the message from society that, oh, if you want to be successful, you need to be a narcissist. If the parent is constantly driving them to be successful, but then on top of that constantly tears them down and says, you're a narcissist, you're a narcissist, you're a narcissist, eventually the child is going to say, you know what? I guess I'm a narcissist. And they're going to find an Ayn Rand book, and they're going to find some self-help book, and they're going to say, I am a narcissist. I'm going to dare to be selfish. I'm going to have the virtue of selfishness. Well, they're in for a rude awakening, because most narcissists are total failures. Let that sink in. Most narcissists are total failures. Yeah, that doesn't fit any of these books. All of these websites and all of these articles coming out claim, oh, my boss is a narcissist. This person who's more successful than me is a narcissist. The CEO is a narcissist. This actor is a narcissist. No. Most narcissists are total failures. The notion that celebrities and successful people are all narcissists is very deceptive. In the workplace, in business, in political organizing, and in social life, narcissists are people that no one wants to work with. Narcissists are rude, self-centered, they get easily offended, they throw fits if they don't get what they want, etc. Nobody wants to work with a narcissist. Nobody wants to do business with a narcissist. No one wants to be in the political organization of a narcissist. Nobody wants to be friends with a narcissist. Narcissists are generally unpleasant to be around. Nobody wants to work with a narcissist. So this idea that, oh, well, I'm going to become a narcissist so I can become rich. I'm going to become a narcissist so I can be a famous actor. I'm going to become a narcissist to advance my career. No, 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 no. No. You become a narcissist, everyone will hate you. You become a narcissist, you're going to annoy the shit out of other people. And I'll be honest, some of the most unsuccessful, unhappy people I've met are narcissists. The kind of person, you sit down with them and you can't get a word out of your mouth. You know, you start a sentence and they cut you off to tell you, oh, and I know this, right? They're so insecure, they've got to show you how smart they are. They won't even let you get a sentence out of their mouth before they cut you off to let you know they already know something. The person who is just constantly relating it back to them, right? You know, you tell them about a hardship that you've had in your life and they cut you off immediately and start talking about something that happened with them. They can't relate to you at all. I mean, you know, narcissists are not fun to be around. They're unpleasant. They're assholes. They're assholes. Right? And this notion, look, I know that Donald Trump's persona is narcissistic, his tweets, etc. But that said, people that I have interacted with who have met Donald Trump have said that when they met him, he let them talk the whole time. He listened to them the whole time. You know, and that, I mean, Donald Trump, I've heard different things, but to be honest, I doubt he would be able to be as successful as he has been in life, love him or hate him, if everyone who encountered him thought, what an asshole, right? I mean, generally to be, you know, moderately successful in business, to maintain some level of popularity, people have to like you. And nobody likes narcissists. Narcissists are really stressful to be around. Being around a narcissist wears you out. It is emotionally exhausting. Right? Narcissists are people who make you feel like you have to walk on eggshells, right? You have to walk on eggshells around a narcissist because if you say the wrong thing, they're going to get their vanity is going to be hurt and there's going to be hell to pay, right? A narcissist is somebody who never lets you get a word in edgewise. They're constantly just constantly wanting their due. A narcissist is someone who makes you very afraid to be around because if everything doesn't go their way, they're going to throw a fit and yell and become vengeful and hateful. People don't like to deal with narcissists. And as a result, they don't tend to do business with them. They don't tend to join political organizations with them. They don't tend to be friends with them. And most narcissists are highly, highly unsuccessful. Now, there's one exception. One exception, which is if someone's already very, very rich and very well positioned, their narcissism may not be a barrier to their success. It may be, right, if someone's already super rich and they're already rich and they're already, they're already in a good spot or whatever, their desire for validation might motivate them to go out and do things, right? You know, there's a lot of rich people who are narcissistic, who they're already rich, but they start a charity because they want everyone to go, oh, what a nice person they are. And doing that charity might get them attention in the media, and it might actually help advance them, right? Because they've got that desire for validation. It might be that someone's from a very, very wealthy family, and they're already well positioned, but they want to be internet famous. So they set up a YouTube channel, and that drive to have lots of people watching them and liking them, that, inspires them to work harder to achieve their goal. But generally, unless the person is already super rich and well positioned, narcissism is going to be a barrier to their success, and it's going to keep them from getting ahead. It's not going to help them, right? If everyone you meet experiences you as a self-important, selfish asshole who's not interested in you, who is constantly getting offended and getting their ego, their vanity hurt, and if everyone you meet experiences you that way, people are not going to want to be around you. So there you go. Being successful in business, politics, and social life requires thinking about other people, empowering other people, and not being threatened by other people's successes. And that's something narcissists can't do. Being successful requires finding ways to benefit from the success of others, not being jealous or threatened by it, right? If you're starting a company, you need skilled, good people to work for your company. And you need those skilled, good people to go out and do good things and accomplish things for the good of your company. And narcissists can't handle that. They have to be the center of attention. No one's allowed to be good except them. They get jealous if anybody else, and they're not going to be very successful, right? One key thing that gets in narcissists' way is that they can never let anybody else achieve. They can never benefit from anyone else's success. Everyone else's success is somehow an affront to them. Everyone else's achievement is somehow a sign that they are being attacked, that they're being pushed out of the spotlight. And that's just not a recipe for success. If you are going to succeed in business, in politics, in life in general, you need to have people around you who are successful, and you need to find a way to ride their success, right? I mean, that's just how these things work. You cannot have the main character syndrome that narcissists all have if you want to be successful, right? If you cannot ride someone else's coattails, if you cannot, be a boat that rises because the rising tide that raises all boats, it's going to be very hard to get ahead, right? If you cannot ever find win-win, if you cannot ever find mutual benefit, if it's always you or them, it's going to be them and it's not going to be you, right? And that's one thing that really gets in narcissists' way is they cannot benefit from other people's success, right? They just can't. Other people's success is always a threat to them. The scarcity mindset. And when it really gets down to it, and this is the important thing, narcissism comes from a wound. People don't become abnormally narcissistic without being very badly hurt. Hate to break it to you, but people have it in their head that narcissism is a result of people just not being harmed enough, people just not being bullied enough, people just not being punished enough. Wrong. It's the opposite. Narcissism always comes from being badly hurt. Sociopathy is not the case. You could say sociopaths are born that way. They're just lacking certain connections, but people don't become narcissists without being very badly hurt. Narcissists deep down are extremely insecure. What narcissism really is a desperate, abnormal need for validation. Most of us can go through life without getting a gold medal in the Olympics, without, being the best at everything, without, we can just go through life just being normal. Narcissists are people that have been badly wounded, and as a result of being very badly wounded, they need constant validation. They need constant reminder that they're good, they're special, they're important. It is an extreme weakness, and it comes from being very badly hurt. Now, that is why you cannot cure narcissism by bullying somebody, by punishing somebody, and by persecuting them. And if anything, you're actually going to make the problem worse, right? If you go out of your way to harm a narcissist, they're going to say, wow, look how I'm being victimized. And it's going to make their narcissism even worse. If you go out of your way, I'm just telling you, right, that you're going to make the wound, the insecurity that drives their narcissism even more extreme, and they're going to become even more narcissistic. That is what is going to happen. And that doesn't fit what we all know, right? You know, narcissists were told they all just need to be punished. They all just need to be beaten down to size. No, you are wrong. You are absolutely wrong about that. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't defend yourself, right? You know, it doesn't mean you shouldn't defend yourself. Really, the only thing that is going to cure a narcissist is that they need to experience real love and connection with another person. Real love requires mutual connection. You can't really love somebody if you don't acknowledge their existence, if you don't feel empathy for them. And a narcissist, the only way they're going to stop being a narcissist is to actually develop real connection and relationships with other people, to actually, you know, have empathy. They need to grow up emotionally. They need to get out of the, you know, they need to get unfrozen in their development, and they need to connect with other people in the way that they're incapable of doing. That's what they ultimately need. And, you know, I'm not saying you should love a narcissist. That may be dangerous, right? And I'm not saying you shouldn't defend yourself if a narcissist attacks you. You absolutely should. You have a right to defend yourself. But I'll also warn you that the more of a pissing match that you get into with a narcissist, the more narcissistic you're going to get yourself. Narcissists know how to really hurt you. And they have to, because you existing is a threat to them, right? And they've just got to, oh my God, you know, you exist, that can't be, yeah, you know. And the more that you get into a fight with a narcissist, the more you're going to get hurt, and the more you're going to end up being narcissistic yourself. Ultimately, the best thing you can do with a narcissist is just get away from them, right? Because they're never going to tolerate your existence. They're never going to appreciate anything good about you. The best thing to do with a narcissist is just to get away from them, right? And that doesn't mean you shouldn't defend yourself. That doesn't mean, you know, if a narcissist is lying about you, you shouldn't, you know, tell people the truth. If a narcissist is, you know, is trying to harm you, you shouldn't push them off. But generally, you don't want to get into a back and forth with a narcissist, because the more you engage that, the more narcissistic you're going to get down to their level. It's going to drive you down to their level, because they're going to harm you, and they're going to harm you and victimize you. And as a result, you're going to become more narcissistic in your desire to defend yourself. And so the best thing to do with a narcissist is just get away from them. And the only cure is they're eventually going to have to develop real relationships and have real empathy. That's really the only cure for narcissism. And it's not your job to give it to them, right? Please don't misunderstand me, right? You know, you might think I'm being hokey here and say, oh, if someone's a narcissist, just love them. No, I'm not saying that. That's not your job, right? If someone is a dangerous narcissistic person who is harming you, who thinks they have to tear you down in order to be at the top, just get away from them, right? It's not your job to love them. It's not your job to be the person who helps them. No, just get away from them. That's what I'm telling you. That's what I'm telling you. But I do want to actually share a story. I do want to share a story about a narcissist that I knew, for whom this is actually true. And I've thought about this narcissist a lot. When I was in high school, I had a teacher. And this teacher it's funny, I laugh about it now. When you are a young person, I was a high school student. I was 14 years old when I had this person as my teacher. They're the adult. You assume the adult is right. That's what you do. You just assume the adult is right. So we didn't think anything of it. I have joked about it with people I went to high school with. This guy was a narcissist on the extreme level. On the first day of school, every year, he showed us a PowerPoint presentation about all the awards he had won for being an amazing teacher. Every year. That's how he started his class. I won this award, and then I won this award, and then I won this award. I mean, literally, the first class of every school year was him going on and on about what an amazing person, what an amazing teacher he was. I later found out the reason that he had won so many awards is because he would pressure students to nominate him for those awards, and he would actually write their essays for them. Right? I mean, you can't make this up. But he was so determined to have awards to show everybody what an amazing teacher he was, that he would actually find students and pressure them to write, you know, and nominate him for awards, write the essays for them. He had to get that validation. This guy was really narcissistic and unhealthy. And he did a lot of things. For example, he made fun of people in class all the time, you know. And he passed it off as just a joke. But the second anyone made the slightest joke about him, he flew off the handle. He would start throwing things and start yelling. He took it very, very, very personally if anyone made any joke at his expense, right? One instance that I remember with this guy was that I guess something happened. There was a student in his class, or in one of his classes. He gave them detention for some reason. I don't know why. And like later that day, they were in the hallway talking to another student. And they said, yeah, I can't believe I just got this detention. And he overheard this. And he made a scene in the hallway and started yelling, if you think your detention's unfair, you come talk to me about it. You don't go complaining to other people about that. If you, and just made a big scene in the hallway, just started yelling because he overheard this other kid complaining to another kid that he got a detention from a teacher, right? That somebody might not see him as the good guy. Right? This guy was bonkers. This guy was narcissistic on a level that I have not seen, honestly, right? And it's funny when you're a high school kid, he's just a teacher at your school, right? Whatever, that's the way he acts. I look back on that now and I think that guy was a really bad example, right? I mean, I would not want to work with somebody who act that way. I would not. I mean, that person he was really emotionally immature. He needed everyone to be constantly validating him. He needed other people, he needed to tear other people down. He was very insecure. He needed to be thought of as the good guy in all situations. And not surprising, this guy was a Malthusian like you wouldn't believe. And he was constantly talking about overpopulation, right? And constantly going on about how there's too many people in the world, overpopulation. He subtly, I believe at one point, he was subtly hinting that he might believe in eugenics or something like that. He was just obsessive about Malthusianism, right? And he passed it off as, environmental stuff, but he was an obsessive Malthusian. Well, that makes sense, right? That's where this mindset comes from, right? There's too many people in the world, right? There's too many people and they're all an affront to me, right? All these people are taking the spotlight away from me. This guy was very narcissistic. And this guy was not a deflated narcissist. He was a teacher and he was a classical narcissist. He loved to talk, right? He loved to talk about himself. He loved to talk about all his achievements, etc. And that's what brings me to this point about narcissism comes from a wound. Narcissism comes from a wound because this guy told this story to our classes. I think I heard this story sitting in the classroom from him at least 3 times. And the fact that this man told us this on 3 or 4 different occasions, he felt a need to just tell the class this story from his childhood. And he told us all about how when he was 2 years old, right? He was 2 years old and he was in the bathroom and he found a bath brush. And so he thought he would wash the walls. And so he dipped the bath brush in the toilet and was washing the walls as a 2-year-old kid. And his mother came in and saw him, and she took the bath brush and beat the crap out of him with it. And he must have told us that story 5, 6 times. Almost every person who was in his class heard that story from him. And he would tell them, oh, yeah, and I was washing the walls with water from the toilet, and my mother came in there and she took that bath brush and she beat the crap out of me. And he would tell that over and over again, almost like he was trying to reassure himself that somehow that had been okay, right? And he just felt a need to tell us about what was obviously a very, very traumatic childhood experience, right? I mean, obviously, that experience had been very, very traumatic for him. But he felt a need to talk about that experience over and over and over again. And he felt a need, he almost wanted us to tell him, oh, that was good, you got disciplined or whatever, And the fact that he told us that over and over and over again, that tells me that he had a very, very abusive childhood, right? That was probably not the only beating he experienced. And the fact that he talked about it over and over and over again, that tells to me that the narcissism that this man had, that he displayed before the whole world, it came from a very, very, very deep wound. This guy had been very, very badly hurt as a child, and that was why he had grown up into this crazy narcissistic teacher who, felt a need to tear down 14-year-olds in order to prove his self-esteem, who started out every class with a slideshow about all the awards he had won, right? That's what it was. I mean, this guy was very, very badly wounded. And so that's what narcissism is, right? And the fact that these young people are self-IDing as narcissists, they're not narcissists. They're not narcissists. They're young people who want to be successful, and they're young people who likely have had a parent who has accused them of being a narcissist and torn them down for having the big aspirations that the parent has pushed on them. And they're in for a big surprise. They're in for a very big surprise, because in this world, if you act like a narcissist, you are not going to get ahead. If you act like a narcissist, you're not going to be successful. People don't like narcissists. People did not like this teacher I had. People don't like narcissists. And so there you go. That is my presentation for